Hello everybody, Mr. Foley here. Today we are focusing on the basics of geography, and specifically this video will be about part A, map locations. So the purpose of this video lecture is to help you to fill in your notes and have a general understanding of the first part of this unit. Overall, as we go through the basics of geography, these are things that hopefully you have a good idea about already from 7th grade world geography, but they're just the basics. If you're going to do anything in terms of understanding the world and looking at maps, these are things you definitely want to know. So your task as I go through this, in Google Classroom under classwork, you'll see that there's a notes packet, the basics unit. If you click on that, it will load up your notes for this. We are filling in part A today, and so you can just add in the definitions and other information in these spots right here as we go along. So here we go, part A of our basics unit. Let me make this full screen, and we will begin. Okay, so when you're going through, if you're ever looking at the slides, which you can find on Google Classroom too, I will have the video lectures linked here, and I'll tell you where to click to go to the slide for your section. We're just going to go to the next slide today since we are part A. So one of the things I do in the classroom is I have the kids play Battleship a little bit. And the reason for this is really simple. One of the first things we talk about is longitude and latitude. And longitude and latitude are used, obviously, to find spots on a map. Just like the game Battleship is. You do D3, and hopefully you hit the ship there. Well, when you think about longitude and latitude is like the letters. They go across the map, right? And longitude is like the numbers. They go down the map. And so, when we talk about longitude and latitude, we're really looking at how are we looking at the map and where are we trying to find points within that map. So first up, we have longitude. Now, if you look at your notes, you'll see there's a few things you'll fill in here for longitude. You'll probably fill in longitude, meridians, prime meridian, and maybe international dateline, right? So this slide's going to have 4 notes with it. So longitude is going up and down, okay? It's like when you put books on a bookshelf. That's what I think of. So the lines run north and south between the poles, and they're known as meridians. And meridians are measured in degrees from 0 to 180 east and 0 to 180 degrees west, okay? The prime meridian is located at 0. The international dateline is located at 180 degrees. So for this here, if we're looking at our notes, we could put longitude, lines that run north and south between the poles. And then if you look back, it also said known as meridians. So known as meridians. Then for meridians, I would put longitude lines. And then let's see what they said for, okay, the measurements that measure between 0 and 180 degrees. Now this is where you really need to make sure you have the right ones, right? East and west. East or 0 and 180 degrees west. Okay. The prime meridian we said was located at 0 degrees. And the international dateline is located at 180 degrees. So there are your notes for that little part. You can fill those in on your own as well. So let's go back. And feel free to stop the movie whenever you need to if you need to fill in notes, things like that. Okay, so when we go back and we look at this, okay, I want to see if I have here a map of the world first. Okay, so let's look at these lines we were talking about. So let me make this bigger. Present. Perfect. Okay, now let me get my drawing tool here. Okay, so we talked about the prime meridian. That is the line right here, the 0 line. Okay, and everything flows off of that when we're talking about longitude. So everything this direction is going to be west, right? Look at that beautiful W. And everything this direction is going to be east. Those are beautiful letters. Okay. Now the international date line is going to be right around here. It's going to be right around 180. And it varies a little bit. They move it a little bit sometimes so that, you know, like Russia's not in 2 different time zones or 2 different days actually. But it's going to be right around 180. Okay. So you have the 0 line here and the 180 is here. This is also the 180 because these are the same lines. They look like they're on opposite sides of the world. But actually, this 180 and that 180 connect. Okay, so then when we're looking at lines of longitude, they're going to go down. And you'll notice they don't go straight down, right? There's none of this. It doesn't go straight down. It curves because of the curvature of the Earth. So if you're measuring 100 degrees in North America, you can't go straight down because you'll get it wrong. You have to curve with the line. So instead of being in the Atlantic Ocean, you'd be near Colorado. Okay. So those are kind of important things to think about. Cool. Okay. So let's go back up here. Let me get rid of my ink tools here. Okay, so we're going to go up a bit back to longitude. Okay, so the meridians in this map are going to be any of your lines that are going down. Okay, if we're looking at around our area, we're right between the 90 west and the 95 west, right? So they're going to go down. Make sure to follow the line. Sometimes it'll curve, those kind of things. Now latitude runs across the map, and I think about pancakes there and stacking pancakes up, right? You don't stack them like this, you stack them across. Okay, these are lines known as parallels, and they measure between 0 and 90 north and 0 and 90 south, and the center line is going to be your equator. Okay, so let's fill in our notes for that section. So these are lines that run parallel to the equator. And they run, let me see what we had here, just make sure you had it right. North or south. And are called parallels. So you have parallels are measure either 0 to 90 degrees north or 0 to 90 degrees south. Good. And then for the equator, we just said located at 0 degrees. There, perfect. Those notes filled in. Okay, so when we go back now, we have, okay, moving on to our next note here, the parallels. And when we look at our parallels, once this loads, we can see that they're going across the Earth. And so here's 30 north, 40 north is here, 45. Now, again, the same thing as I said before is important here too. You need to make sure that as you're drawing these lines, you don't, well, you do go in a straight line, okay? Or you don't, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. You don't go in a straight line. For example, 45 north. If I go in a straight line, this is what I get. But that's not 45 north, right? If we actually look at 45 north, we're looking at this line right here that curves down and around, right? And so instead of being above Minnesota, I'm near the southern part of Minnesota. So always watch it when you're doing lines, especially with these parallels, because they are going to curve with the Earth, okay? And so you figure out where you are. using that. Great. Let me clear this off, and we can move on to our next part here. So the next one is coordinates, and you can fill your notes in here. I don't need to write them down. Coordinates are measures of longitude and latitude that provide the absolute location of a city or place. We use coordinates all the time, and we don't realize it a lot of times, but anything we have with our GPS, those are coordinates, okay? And so the GPS, if you type in an address, is literally putting in latitude and longitude coordinates to find that location. So when you think about coordinates, let's take a look at a map of Wisconsin here. So if we're trying to find the coordinates of a high school, okay, well on a map of Wisconsin, we'd have to go with the coordinates for Wisconsin. Now, if I look here, my longitude, it's kind of hard to see. This is going to be the 92 line here, and this is going to be the 93. So it looks like I'm at about 92.5 west for longitude, and latitude is about 44 3/4. But that's not very specific, but thankfully we do have the ability to get specific, and GPS locations allow that. So for example, we want to know the high school. So if I go onto Google Earth and I go into the high school, right? Well, if I click on the high school, it gives me these directions, right? And so these coordinate with what we were talking about here. We're at about 92.5. So it says 92.48 degrees west and 44.72 degrees north. Now, what you'll notice is the numbers will change if I go at different places. It's a little bit different. You see 604 there. Here you see a 658. And so every place on Earth has a little tiny bit different location. And this is really important for a lot of things that we do. You know, in terms of if you're delivering packages to a very large building, it can help you figure out where to go exactly. We use GPS with tractors and fields and things like that. Bombing, honestly, to get really accurate bombing results, we use GPS as well. So when we're talking about coordinates, we're talking about this idea of absolute location, which is your next note, the exact position of a place on a map. And usually with absolute location, we use coordinates, or maybe we use street addresses. It's not as good, but it's pretty close. But absolute is like knowing exactly where you want to be. Okay. So for example, if I said find the city with the coordinates of 39 north and 106 west, that would be pretty absolute, right, on this kind of map. So if I look, well, here's 40 north. Here's 100 west. So we're looking right around 105 west, 106 west, 39. That would be Denver right there. And so you use those coordinates to figure out your absolute location. Now, relative location is a little bit different. With relative location, we're looking at its location in terms of other places. And so you might say, you know, the location of the high school in comparison to the elementary school or St. Francis School or something like that. So for example, Wisconsin is what of Minnesota is what of Wisconsin? Well, we'd say, okay, Minnesota is west of Wisconsin. The US is what of Canada and what of Mexico? Well, it's north of Canada, south of Mexico. I said that wrong. It's south of Canada and it's north of Mexico, right? Now, in terms of looking at a bigger map, we're going to look at hemispheres. So this is, I think these are, let me check your notes here. Yeah, this is our last note for this section. Perfect. Okay. So when we look at hemispheres, these contain half the Earth. So how many hemispheres are there? Well, it's kind of a tricky question. You'd think, well, 2, half the Earth. It's actually 4, because it depends on how you're splitting up the Earth. Okay, so you're going to have a northern, a southern, an eastern, and a western. So here are your 4 hemispheres. And understanding the hemispheres and what continents are in them is pretty important. It helps to understand the world a lot easier. And I'll show you that with this next map here. So if we split up the world, and I'll just do my drawing here. Okay. All right, so here's our 0 line, right? I'm really bad at drawing straight lines. Here's my 0 line here. Now we know that up here is the northern hemisphere, right? And down here is the southern hemisphere. And then we know that this is your west and this is your east. So if I can figure out this whole part right here, this is the northwest. Okay, northern and western hemispheres. And I know, all right, United States is in that place. So then I know if it says northwestern hemisphere, United States might be one, right? It gets a little trickier with other continents. If you look at Africa, Africa is in the northwest, the northeast, and the southeast. But you know it's not in the southwest. So it's good to be able to divide your world into 4 and kind of have an idea of where the continents are, because then if you see the coordinates are in the northeast, you know it's not Australia, you know it's not South America, you know it's not North America, because this right here is the northeast. Okay, so that is what we have with that. If I take a look here, I think we have all our notes filled in for this section, which is great. I can clear my ink off here so it's not so ugly. Oh, this is the wrong one. Sorry. So we have our first section of notes filled in. You can always go back in the video if you need any of those and let me know if you have any questions. That's what we got. We'll go from there. In the next video, we'll focus on part B, the 5 themes of geography. Have a great day.